Good morning, Dan and Amy. Returning to our profiling of local elections. April 6th is Election Day, and the lockdown policies related to K through 12 education have prompted a number of first-time candidates to enter school board races. You should take judicial notice of those candidates in your community, particularly as the science continues to evolve, with the CDC announcing on Friday that the recommended distance between K through 12 students has been cut in half from 6 feet to 3 feet. We really don't have the evidence that 6 feet is required in order to maintain low spread. CDC Community Interventions and Critical Populations Task Force leader Greta Massetti told the Associated Press. And they really didn't have that evidence for, I don't know, the past 10 months or so. Nonetheless, it's taken to this point to get here because, of course, we're slow walking our way to conclusions that have already been drawn by hundreds of millions of common sense Americans. On the school board front, we have two first-time candidates with us. They are running for school board at Stevenson High School, District 125, Stevenson High School up there in Lincolnshire.
Yep.
And their names are Barb Tolbert and Nicole Grimes. Barb, Nicole, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning. Thank you.
All right, Barb, let's start with you. Give me the pitch. Why did you decide to run for school board?
Well, really, it was pretty simple. When we started to see that the school was going to stay closed during the beginnings of COVID, we started to question some things. Why? What's the plan? How do we know when things will be safe? What are your requirements? We were not getting any feedback, and it became evident that there was no plan. When we looked back at the period of April, May, June, there was no discussion from the school board about our kids. They were talking about things like the construction project and how important that was and the timing and all of that. Their board meetings were full of administrative ideas, but nothing about the students. That was my first clue that the school board, who is in place to represent the community, was not representing the community. Questions were being asked and all sorts of things were being directed to them, and there was avoidance. And from there, I started to learn more about the school that I thought I knew. And
the school that you thought you knew. That's interesting. Yeah. And not to interrupt, but Nicole, what was your experience in terms of starting to raise some of the questions that Barb was referencing, and how you were, responded to by the powers that be?
Very similar.
We
get
right
up
mic
there.
That phone. Yeah.
Very similar. I am a mother to
Is that mic on?
Yep, it is. Here,
Do we
come on
got-
over here.
All right.
Well, I'm sorry about
No,
that.
it's all right. It's our technical workshop here.
My experience is very similar to Barb. I'm a mother to 4 children, and 3 of them are graduates of Stevenson, and one of them is there. My child that is there right now is basically been lost, and there are a lot of kids that are in that same situation. There are a lot of children that cannot learn without being in school and being engaged with their peers and their teachers. And that's when I started to see it. I have always felt that Stevenson kept the parents, kind of hands off. They didn't really want us involved, but it wasn't until this where I really saw that they absolutely don't want us involved. We had many community members that went to them just asking for input and visibility into the decision-making process for a return to the fall. And they would listen, but they would just say, okay, well, maybe we'll think about that. But then they would never even get back to us. And we would keep persevering, and they still would not do anything. And at the end of the day, they were the first school in our area to just cancel and say, we're not going back in the fall. And they did that in July. And they essentially stopped any planning if they were doing anything. We don't think they were doing any planning to begin with, and they stopped at that point. Even those schools around us they were actively engaging their communities to find ways, creative ways to have school, because they knew how important it was for the kids. They were, using tents, finding ways to map out the 6 feet distance. They were all doing that, and our school just would not. They wouldn't listen to us, and it became very frustrating. And during this process, both Barb and I have found that they just don't want us to be involved. And it's very sad
Yeah.
because the school board is supposed to represent us, the parents, the students, and the community. That's what it's supposed to do.
Well, what's the situation like now? Is there hybrid learning? Is there anything in person? Because I know you two have been fighting. I met you months ago. You have been fighting, to get hybrid learning. Is that even going on right now at Stevenson, Barb?
So there is hybrid learning, and there is a new design for, of course, April 5th, which we find to be interesting timing. Nothing really
Sure.
has changed between January and April, but all of a sudden the path is clear and we can get those kids back in school. So part of why, so the kids is definitely one thing. And we, as Nicole said, as community members, they're the only people that represent us. Teachers have their representatives, administration have theirs. We don't have anybody, and part of what is really alarming at Stevenson is the incumbents who are the opposition are saying that we, Nicole and I, are risking the Stevenson way. In fact, here is
Oh, wow.
Their-
show, Dan.
here's their flyer that they put out. The Stevenson way of excellence is at risk in this election.
Okay.
Okay.
And you had a third party candidate that was with you. And do you want to explain what happened to that gentleman?
Yes, we had a very competent, very, someone that represented our community very well. And they dug and dug and dug until they found something that would make him feel so uncomfortable with his two kids at Stevenson that he decided it was in the best interest of his family to drop out. They forced him to have to be embarrassed in his community. These are things that, they're saying back to us, well, he did these things. Well, he was never convicted. There was never anything. I mean, these are some of the things that we all, you walk out of a department store by accident with one small item by accident. And they blew it up so that it made him look like a criminal with no judgment. Then they hooked it back to us. Then we have no judgment for asking him to be someone part of our campaign.
Well, okay. So, what is the reaction? I mean, because here's the problem you guys have, right? The Stevenson way. Of course, they're going to do the Stevenson way thing because, your test scores are good and the graduation rate is high, proficiency in math and reading, whatever proficiency means anymore in 2021 is high. And so they're going to say, look, your kids are doing well. Kids have always done well here. We had this little hiccup over the last year with the pandemic, and now we're going to get back on the Stevenson way. And the only way that changes, the imperiousness that you're talking about changes, is if enough parents are sufficiently engaged to have the experience that you two are describing you've had. And so I wonder what kind of reaction you're getting during this campaign from those with kids in the school and those who may have had some similar experience. I mean, do you really feel like people are doing what a lot of these communities do, which is protect the shield? You can't be critical of Stevenson because you're going to lower our property values. You're going to lower the status associated with my kid's high school diploma, and so we don't want to address any problems. We want to paper over them. Or are people really revolting up your way?
Well, Stevenson has already lowered property values by increasing taxes to
Well,
a degree
Yeah, right.
that parents are considering whether they can even stay in the district. And new people coming in. Nicole has a situation where she knows some new families that couldn't even afford to bring their kids to the community because Stevenson's taxes, the property taxes that they submit every year to Lake County and that we pay are so outrageous. So there was really two parts to this story. One was the student part. The second was the way that Stevenson is run. And as we got deeper in, we started to uncover a lot of concerning decisions on our behalf with our taxpayer money, decisions on behalf of how the things they do, they justify the things they do. We're finding a lot of concerning things, and that's what has prompted us to even become more determined that we must get on this board.
What did you find, Nicole?
We actually started looking at the numbers. We put 13 schools together, schools like Stevenson, and we compared them side by side. And what we found was that, of course, we know Illinois has the second highest property tax rate in the U.S. Lake County has the highest in Illinois. And then we found that Stevenson has the highest. We paid most out of our tax dollars per value of our house than the 13 comparable schools that we looked at. We also found out that Stevenson spends the least amount on education, the second to least amount on education. So, in education being the teachers and the support materials for educating our kids, they spend 32.2%, whereas the average is about 45.6%, and you have some of our surrounding schools that are at 54%.
So just to clarify, spending the least meaning the smallest percentage of every dollar spent on actual classroom instruction, not the
yes.
least in terms of aggregate dollars per pupil, but the least in terms of the money going into the classroom.
The
Yeah.
least going into the classroom, but they spend the most, second most per pupil. Per pupil is at $39,000.
And by the way, Lake County, just even to put this in a national perspective, the last study I saw that looked at Lake County was 22nd in the nation in property tax rate as a percentage of home value, 22nd highest in the nation,
Wow.
and not just number one with a bullet in the Chicago metro region, which it is.
Yeah, and it's astounding. And to your point before, yes, there are many of our opponents, supporters for our opponents, who say that we are going to damage the home values. Absolutely not. They have damaged us. It is true. I know of 3 young families moving from the city with their young families. That's who we want. And they decided they could not afford the taxes. So they went to our surrounding, schools, the surrounding communities that have very good schools too.
What about though the question I mentioned about is there a revolt afoot against the lockdown approach to K through 12 education? Well, in this case, 9 through 12 education in Lincolnshire, and Steve, it's in the school district.
Yeah, yes, there is. I mean, we have a large support base behind us. They do as well too. It's become a heated, contested, battle.
Yeah.
And we do have a lot of people. We're parents. We just want to be represented. We have kids that we see are suffering. The Stevenson way, they say it's been to lead us safely through the pandemic. They didn't lead, and safety for them was just saying, stay at home. We had a parent that went to them about a month and a half ago, I'm going to say, and started bringing up that other schools were looking at 3 feet for a measurement, that was what other schools were looking at. In response, the board goes, have you heard that? And somebody goes, no, yeah, we haven't heard that. And that's what we're
End
dealing
of discussion,
with.
right? Yeah. Yeah, that's how intellectually curious they are. I mean, the default to locking down because they're all safetyists. The cult of safetyism is what sounds like is afoot there.
Yes, without looking at the safety of our kids emotionally and educationally.
And your opponents, are they teachers union backed by any chance?
Well, we feel very strongly that with the money they're spending on their campaign, there is backing, and it may be even deeper than union. It probably is party, but we're speculating. We do know that the teachers union at Stevenson made the decision to back the incumbents who are our opponents. We find that interesting. These are the same teachers that will soon be negotiating their contracts. They interviewed me. I said what I believe, which is I support the teachers. I want to see more administrative money going to the teachers. And I believe in inclusivity, diversity, anti-racism. The things that make a community strong is having people align with each other. And they bypassed me. They bypassed another man running also, and they went straight for the incumbents. So whatever that tells you, we feel that the money coming into their campaign, it's double, triple ours. We're very grassroots. We have kids working. We have people who are committed to helping us get on this board, but they're using everything they can to oppose our seat at the table. And we don't understand why they talk about diversity and inclusion, except when it comes to the school board.
I mean, I can't let that slide. Did you say you support anti-racism? Like,
Yes.
so like Ibram Kendi, anti-racism, you're either a racist or you're an anti-racist. If it's all based on your skin color, you're either a victim or you're an oppressor. You support this sort of critical race theory taught in the schools?
No. When I
Well,
say
what does anti-racist mean to you?
that means
Because anti-racist is a specific word these days. It essentially is a synonym for critical race theory.
Yeah, no, I don't believe in that. What I do believe is respect for all people.
Yes, of
And
course.
when I say that, it's making sure that everyone has a voice. When you have a diverse community, you have diversity of thought. So include that diversity of thought. And that's what we are taking attack for. Every fact that we put out there is being attacked as being our own. These are hard numbers. These
Okay.
are hard opinions. People have opinions about what they want.
Understood. I just wanted to clarify because our audience knows because of this show, what that term means. And so I just wanted to make sure we were clear on that. And your explanation has made that clear. So I appreciate that. She is Barb Tolbert. You were just hearing from her. Her co-candidate is Nicole Grimes. They're candidates for Stevenson High School District 125 board come April 6th, and a website where people can get more information on your candidacies.
It is ACT Unified, UNIFIED, at .us.
Act
Sorry.
Unified. Thank you for spelling it for the Hershey grads. in the, Barb and Nicole, thanks so much for joining us. Good luck with your candidacies.
Thank you so much for having us.
It's news, opinion, insight. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
If you purchase your own health insurance, I have some great news. From now until May 15th, the health insurance exchanges are open again. And even if you've never qualified for a health insurance subsidy before, you most likely will now. The American Rescue Plan, signed on March 11th, expanded subsidy eligibility to millions of Americans who have never qualified before, even to those with high income levels, and especially those between the ages of 50 and 65. Those who qualify for unemployment benefits are now guaranteed the lowest priced plan. Employers who provide small group coverage also have new options, and so do seniors looking for Medicare supplement coverage. Call me. I can help.
If you're tired of calling a bureaucrat at an 800 number to help you navigate Obamacare, then you need a local expert on your side. Your own health insurance mentor, C. Stephen Tucker from healthinsurancementors.com, is someone I know and trust. He's a 25-year licensed broker who's been educating our listeners for 10 years. Tell them how they can get in touch with you, Steve.
Thanks, Dad. They can visit healthinsurancementors.com or call me directly at 630-674-1551.
AAA reports that more than half of American drivers are holding on to their older vehicles because they don't want the financial burden of a new car. That's a wise choice if you continue regular maintenance. Hi, it's Charlie Kirk, and did you know that after just 1 year, your new car could be worth about 20% less than what you originally paid for it? Continue to drive your current car and put thousands of dollars in your own pocket. And if you set aside the equivalent of one car payment, you'll have enough for a full year of basic